Okay, so let's talk about functions. Functions allow us to encapsulate a computation, to give it a name and then forget about it. This allows us to manage complexity. We can create a function that somebody else calls. They don't know how we did it. They just plug something in, get something out. Life is good. We can do it the other way around. We can call functions that somebody else did, and we don't know how they work. We could do it within ourselves. We write a function, we know all the details, we do the right thing, and then later on we call that same function and we don't care how it's done. Even though we did it, we can of course go back and figure it out again, but we don't need to remember all the details. This is very similar to the idea of a function in math, which is a black box that you throw numbers at and it gives you numbers back, right? Like sine or cosine. You calculate the sine of 3, you don't know how it works, you get a value and that's all you need. Of course, when you're doing math, you figure out how it works, but you don't need to. In Java, we define a function by giving its return type, the name of the function, and the input parameters, and then saying what it does. This function is going to be called isEven, and it's going to tell us whether a number is even or not. So its return value, the thing that we get out of a function, is a boolean, so it's either true or false. The input is one parameter, which is an integer, and within the function we are going to call it number. This is a local name that's only available within the function. And what we're going to return is whether the remainder of that number divided by 2 is equal to 0, right? And once we define this, you don't need to remember what was the symbol for remainder and things like that. After that, we can call this and it will work. Unfortunately, Java REPL doesn't requires us to put it in one line. So let me type it. Boolean isEven int number. Return. What am I returning? Number %2 equals 0. Once I define this, I can call it isEven 4. We should expect to get true, and we do, and isEven 5, we get false, right? 17, false. Life is good, and now we don't need to remember how we did it anymore. So again, return type, the name, the parameters. If we have more than one, we'll separate with comma, and the code within braces, and eventually you want to do return. Because that's how you say what is being returned, what's the output of that function, what is the value that comes out. Notice that the function returns a value that's going to be used in some other computation. It doesn't print anything to the screen. In the REPL, when we call the function, the REPL will print the output of that function, but that's the REPL, not the function. When we do this function, so this could be involved in some other calculation, right? We can call it within expressions, for example. In this case, nothing would be printed, right? We just stick it in this place. In this variable is 7 even. And I have a typo. You never saw it. It never happened. Java doesn't actually support functions. It supports methods, so they are always attached to a class. For now, our functions will just add public static to them. And for now, think of them as a magical incantation. It's noise that you have to put for Java. Eventually, we'll see what this actually means. But within a function, you can declare variables, and they only live within the function. So in this case, we could, it's definitely overkill for the smaller function, but we could declare our intermediate variable, remainder by 2, which is number divided by 2, and then return whether that remainder by 2 is equal to 0, right? This variable, remainder by 2, only lives within this function, actually within each call. Each call will create a new variable and use it. Now, we can also have nested function calls, and For that, let me define this other function add, which is terribly complicated. It adds two numbers, gets two integers, and returns the result of adding them, right? Let me again type it in Java REPL, because Java REPL is horrible. Int add, but it's still very nice because it lets us do it in real time rather than have to write a full program, right? Let me actually cheat. N1 int N2, and I'm just gonna return N1 plus N2. So that's the add function. When I call it with add 4 and 5, I expect to get 4 plus 5, which is 9, and I get it. Life is good. Now, I can also, that function now is kind of a piece of the language, so I can use it within other function calls, other expressions. So I could do add 4 and add 3 4, so that's 7 plus 4, 11, right? And I could do things like int a equals add 4 5 and add 5 6, and so I'm creating a new variable a, and that's adding 4 plus 5, that's 9, 11, and then adding 9 plus 11, so that's going to be 20. Ta-da! And we can also call functions within other functions. So we could define a function isSumEven that takes two integer parameters, calls add to calculate the sum, and then calls isEven on that sum. Let me just do it on the REPL just for fun. It takes a boolean, it returns a boolean, isSumEven, int and 1 just to be lazy because I'm typing it, and 2 return isEven of add and 1 and 2, and so I can call isSumEven with 6 and 7, and it's 13, so it's not even, but I can call it with 7 and 7, that's going to be 14, so it is true. And that basically tells you all you need to know about functions for now. We'll see how to combine them and get more complicated stuff.